Marcus Reed slammed his fist against the steering wheel so hard the horn blared into the empty night. 72 hours. That's all he had left before a judge would decide if he deserved to keep his daughter. 72 hours before the state could rip Lily from his arms and hand her over to a woman who'd already abandoned her once. He was broke, exhausted, running out of options. But what Marcus didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that in the next 30 minutes he would make a decision that would change everything. And the two strangers he was about to help their father would be sitting behind that judge's bench. Before we continue, drop a comment and tell us what city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. The rain came down like God himself was trying to wash the whole damn world away. Marcus Reed gripped the steering wheel of his 15-year-old Honda Civic, squinting through a windshield the wipers couldn't keep up with. His shoulders ached. His back screamed. 14 hours he'd worked today, 8 under car hoods at Patterson's Auto. 6 more slinging coffee at the diner on 5th Street. His hands still smelled like motor oil and burnt coffee grounds. "Come on," he muttered, leaning forward as if those extra few inches would help him see through the sheets of water. "Come on, come on." Lightning cracked across the sky, turning the whole world white for half a second. In that flash, Marcus saw the highway stretching out ahead of him, empty, dark, and endless. Just like his bank account. Just like his options. He thought about Lily, probably asleep on the couch right now, waiting for him. Mrs. Patterson from next door would be watching her reading one of those romance novels she loved so much, while Lily clutched her stuffed elephant and fought to keep her eyes open. "Daddy always comes home," Lily would say. She'd been saying it every night for 3 years ever since Victoria walked out. Marcus's jaw tightened at the thought of his ex-wife, Victoria. The woman who'd left them without a word, who'd disappeared for 3 years, no calls, no letters, no child support. Nothing. Just gone. And now she wanted Lily back. Now that she'd found some new boyfriend with money, now that she'd gotten herself a fancy lawyer, now she suddenly remembered she had a daughter. "Over my dead body," Marcus said to the empty car. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. He glanced at it, a text from his public defender, Mr. Warren. "Reminder, custody hearing Monday 9 a.m. Please arrive early. And Marcus, try to get some sleep this weekend. You need to look sharp." Sleep. Right. When was the last time Marcus had actually slept? Really slept, not just collapsed for a few hours between shifts. He couldn't remember. Another bolt of lightning. Another explosion of thunder that seemed to shake the whole car. Marcus reached for the radio, desperate for something to fill the silence, to drown out the voice in his head that kept whispering, "You're going to lose her. You're going to lose everything." The radio crackled with static. Every station was garbage in this storm. He turned it off and drove in silence. The highway was empty, had been for the last 20 miles. Nobody else was stupid enough to be out in weather like this. Smart people were home, warm and dry, probably sitting in front of their TVs with their families. Marcus couldn't remember the last time he'd watched TV with Lily. Couldn't remember the last time he'd done anything with her that didn't involve rushing to get somewhere or collapsing from exhaustion. That's what Victoria's lawyer is going to say, he thought. That you're never there, that you work too much, that you can't provide. "I provide," Marcus growled. "I provide every damn day." But even as he said it, doubt crept in. The apartment was small, 1-bedroom that Lily got while Marcus slept on the couch. The fridge was usually half empty by the end of the week. And birthday presents, Christmas gifts. Those came from the clearance rack at Walmart, when they came at all. Was that enough? Was love enough when you couldn't afford dance lessons, or summer camp, or any of the things other kids had? Marcus didn't know anymore. 3 days ago he would have said yes without hesitation. But 3 days ago, he hadn't seen the look on the family court judge's face during the preliminary hearing. Hadn't seen the way the man's eyes had swept over his worn clothes, his calloused hands, his exhaustion. "You're already judged," that voice whispered again. "They took one look at you and decided." "Shut up," Marcus said out loud. "Just shut up." The rain seemed to pound harder in response. And then headlights. Marcus squinted through the windshield. Up ahead, maybe a quarter mile, he could see taillights glowing red through the storm. A car on the shoulder. And next to it were those people. He slowed down, wiping condensation from the inside of the windshield with his sleeve. The figures became clearer, 2 of them standing in the rain beside what looked like a dark sedan. One of them was waving. "No," Marcus said, pressing the gas pedal. "No, no, no. Not tonight. I can't tonight." He had enough problems. The hearing was in 72 hours. He needed to get home, needed to sleep, needed to figure out how to convince a judge that being poor didn't mean being a bad father. The figures grew larger in his windshield. Women. Young women. Soaking wet, standing in a storm that could kill them if they got struck by lightning or hit by a passing truck. Damn it! Marcus's foot moved to the brake before his brain could stop it. The Honda slowed, pulled to the side, stopped. He sat there for a moment, rain hammering the roof like 1,000 tiny fists. "Keep driving," the voice said. "You don't have time for this. You don't have the energy. You don't have anything to give." But then he thought about Lily. 6 years old with her mother's brown eyes and her father's stubborn streak. What if it was her someday? What if she was stranded somewhere scared and alone, and everyone just kept driving? "God help me," Marcus muttered. He pushed open the door and stepped into the storm. The rain hit him like a wall, cold and hard and relentless. Within seconds, his work shirt was soaked through, plastered to his skin. He jogged toward the stranded car, squinting against the downpour. "Hey!" he called out. "You okay?" The 2 figures turned. Identical faces looked back at him, twins maybe 19 or 20 years old, with dark hair matted to their foreheads and mascara running down their cheeks. They were wearing clothes that Marcus recognized immediately: expensive, designer, the kind of things he saw in magazine ads and department store windows, never on actual people he knew. "Oh, thank God," one of them said, rushing toward him. "Thank God someone stopped." "We've been here for over an hour," the other one added, her voice shaking. "Our car just died, and our phones are dead, and nobody would stop. Hey, it's okay." Marcus held up his hands. "Take a breath. What happened?" The first twin, the one who'd spoken first, pointed at the car. "We were driving home from a charity event, and the engine just stopped. We pulled over, and it won't start again." Marcus looked at the vehicle for the first time. His eyebrows rose. A Mercedes-Benz S-Class, the kind of car that cost more than Marcus would make in 5 years, maybe 10. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked. "Please," they said in unison. Marcus walked around to the front of the Mercedes and popped the hood. The engine was pristine, probably maintained by some fancy dealership where they charged $300 for an oil change. But even fancy cars had basic problems. He leaned in, rainwater streaming down his face, and found it almost immediately. "Battery terminals," he called out. "They're corroded. Connections loose. Can you fix it?" The second twin appeared at his elbow, hugging herself against the cold. Marcus shook his head. "Not out here. Not in this storm. You need a jump start at minimum, probably a new battery." He closed the hood and turned to face them. "Look, there's a hotel about 15 minutes up the road. I can give you a ride. You can call a tow in the morning." The twins exchanged a glance, that silent communication thing that twins did. "You do that?" the first one asked. "You don't even know us." Marcus shrugged, rain dripping off his chin. "Can't leave you out here. Come on before we all drown." They grabbed their bags from the Mercedes designer luggage that probably cost more than Marcus's car and climbed into his Honda. The contrast was almost funny. Almost. "I'm Sophie," the one in the passenger seat said, as Marcus pulled back onto the highway. "This is my sister Maya." "Marcus." "Thank you for stopping, Marcus." Maya leaned forward from the back seat. "Seriously, We were starting to think no one would. People are scared these days, Marcus said, keeping his eyes on the road. Can't really blame them. But you stopped, Sophie pointed out. Marcus was quiet for a moment. The wipers slapped back and forth. Rain drummed on the roof. I have a daughter, he finally said. She's 6. If she was ever stranded somewhere scared and alone in a storm like this, I'd want someone to stop for her. The car fell silent. What's her name? Maya asked softly. Lily. That's beautiful, Sophie said. Then hesitantly, Do you get to see her often? The question hit harder than she could have known. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Every chance I get, he said, which might not be for much longer. What do you mean? Marcus didn't know why he said it. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the darkness, the rain, the anonymity of talking to strangers he'd never see again. Maybe he just needed to say it out loud to someone who wasn't going to judge him. Her mother and I are divorced, he said. She left 3 years ago, just vanished. No contact, nothing. And now she's back and she's trying to take full custody. Says I'm not fit to be a father because I work too much, because I don't make enough money. He laughed bitterly. We go to court in 3 days. That's horrible, Sophie whispered. It is what it is. Marcus's voice was flat-tired. I'm doing everything I can. 2 jobs, saving every penny, showing up to every school event, every parent-teacher conference. But sometimes... He trailed off. Sometimes what? Maya prompted gently. Sometimes it feels like it's not enough. Like the world already decided I'm not good enough, and nothing I do is going to change that. The words hung in the air, heavy and painful. Sophie turned to look at him, really look at him for the first time. Can I tell you something? Marcus glanced at her. Sure. Our father is like that, always working. We barely see him. He has all the money in the world, but... She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. We'd trade all of it, every penny, just to have dinner with him once a week without him checking his phone. Just to have him actually be there. He thinks providing means everything, Maya added from the back seat. He doesn't understand that we just want him present. That's all. Just... there. Marcus didn't know what to say. These girls with their designer clothes and their Mercedes and their clearly wealthy father, they were lonely. He could hear it in their voices, see it in the way they looked at each other. You should tell him that, he said finally. We've tried. Sophie's voice was small. He doesn't listen, says we don't understand what it takes to maintain our lifestyle. Sounds lonely. It is. Sophie turned to face the window. Money doesn't fix loneliness. It just makes it more comfortable. They drove in silence for a while. The storm seemed to be letting up a little. The rain still fell, but the lightning had moved on to terrorize some other stretch of highway. Marcus thought about what they'd said. About their father, who was never there. About having everything except the one thing that mattered. He thought about Lily waiting for him on that couch. About how even when he was exhausted, even when he could barely keep his eyes open, he always kissed her forehead and told her he loved her. Always. Maybe that was worth something. Maybe that was worth everything. You seem like a good dad, Maya said, eventually breaking the silence. The kind who stops in a storm. The kind who shows up. Marcus's throat tightened. I'm trying to be. That's more than most people do, Sophie said. The hotel appeared up ahead, a mid-range chain place with a lit sign and a mostly empty parking lot. Marcus pulled under the covered entrance and put the car in park. The twins gathered their things, but Sophie hesitated before opening her door. Marcus. Yeah. She turned to face him, her eyes serious. I hope the judge sees what we see, that you're exactly the kind of father your daughter needs. Marcus couldn't speak. He just nodded. Good luck, Maya said from the back seat. "We'll be thinking about you." They climbed out, grabbed their bags, and disappeared into the hotel lobby. Marcus watched them go, something strange stirring in his chest. Hope. It felt foreign. Dangerous even. He'd stopped hoping weeks ago when Victoria's lawyer had laid out their case, and Marcus had realized just how outmatched he was. But those girls, those strangers he'd probably never see again, they'd looked at him and seen something good. Something worthy. Maybe the judge would too. Marcus pulled back onto the highway and drove toward home. The apartment was quiet when Marcus finally pushed through the door just past midnight. Mrs. Patterson looked up from her romance novel and smiled. "She tried to wait up for you," she whispered, nodding toward the couch. "Couldn't quite make it." Marcus looked at his daughter. Lily was curled up under the old Afghan his mother had knitted years ago, her stuffed elephant clutched to her chest. Her face was peaceful in sleep, none of the worry that had been there lately, none of the fear. "Thank you for staying," Marcus said, reaching for his wallet. He pulled out a 20 money he couldn't really afford and held it out to Mrs. Patterson. She waved it away. "Keep it. You need it more than I do." "I can't." "You can and you will." She patted his arm as she walked past. "Get some rest, Marcus. You look like death warmed over." After she left, Marcus knelt beside the couch. He brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face, and her eyes fluttered open. "Daddy." "Hey, sweetheart, I'm home." "I missed you." Her voice was thick with sleep. "I missed you too, baby. Go back to sleep." But instead of closing her eyes, Lily sat up, rubbing her face with small fists. "Daddy." "What is it?" She looked at him with those big brown eyes, Victoria's eyes, but filled with a trust Victoria had never earned. "Are we going to be okay?" The question hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. She was 6 years old. 6. She shouldn't have to ask questions like this. Shouldn't have to worry about whether her family was going to stay together. "Of course we are, sweetheart. Why would you ask that?" Lily's lower lip trembled. "Mommy called today, when you were at work." Marcus went cold. "What?" "She called Mrs. Patterson's phone. She said I might have to come live with her, that you can't take care of me properly." Rage flared in Marcus's chest, hot and immediate. Victoria had called, had talked to Lily directly. She wasn't supposed to do that. The lawyers had agreed no direct contact until after the hearing, but he pushed the anger down. Lily didn't need to see that. She needed reassurance. "Lily, listen to me." Marcus took her hands in his. "Your mommy is wrong. I can take care of you. I will always take care of you. No matter what anyone says." "But she said," "I don't care what she said." Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. "You're my daughter. I love you more than anything in this world, and nobody is going to take you away from me." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. "I don't want to leave you, Daddy." "You won't." He pulled her into a hug, holding her tight against his chest. "I promise you, baby. You won't." It was a promise he had no idea if he could keep. The hearing was in 3 days. Victoria had money, had a lawyer, had a case built on the cruel arithmetic of poverty, the idea that dollars in a bank account mattered more than love in a heart. But as Marcus held his daughter in their small, shabby apartment, rain still pattering against the windows, he made a vow to himself. He would fight. With everything he had, with every ounce of strength left in his body, he would fight. For her. Always for her. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at the tiny kitchen table after putting Lily to bed, surrounded by paperwork. Financial statements, character references from neighbors and co-workers, report cards and attendance records from Lily's school. Anything and everything that might prove he was a fit father. It wasn't much. The numbers told a brutal story. His income was barely above the poverty line. His savings account had less than $400 in it. He was behind on his electric bill, current on rent, only because his landlord had a soft spot for Lily and gave them extensions. On paper, he looked like exactly what Victoria's lawyer was going to say. He was a struggling single father who couldn't provide. But paper couldn't show everything. Paper couldn't show the nights Marcus had stayed up with Lily when she was sick. Couldn't show the hours he'd spent helping her learn to read. Couldn't show the Sunday mornings at the park, or the bedtime stories he made up just for her. Paper couldn't show love. Marcus rubbed his eyes and looked at the clock. 3:47 a.m. He needed to be at the auto shop in 4 hours. "Get some sleep," Mr. Warren had said. "You need to look sharp." Marcus laughed quietly to himself. Sharp. Right. He hadn't looked sharp in years. But he got up anyway, washed his face, set his alarm for 6:30, and lay down on the couch. The cushions were worn, the springs shot, but he'd slept on worse. As he closed his eyes, he thought about the twins Sophie and Maya, about their father who had everything except what mattered, about how they'd looked at Marcus, a broke mechanic in a beat-up car, and seen something worth respecting. "You seem like a good dad, the kind who shows up." Maybe that was enough. It had to be enough. Marcus fell asleep to the sound of rain on the roof, his daughter safe in the next room, and a prayer on his lips that he barely remembered how to say. Saturday morning came gray and drizzly. Marcus worked his shift at the auto shop, then raced to the diner for the lunch rush. His body moved on autopilot, wrenches and coffee pots, oil changes, and order tickets, smiling at customers who looked right through him. In between, he thought about the hearing. He thought about what he would say, how he would say it. He practiced his testimony in his head while he changed a transmission, rehearsed his answers while he refilled coffee mugs. "Why do you believe you should retain custody of your daughter?" "Because I love her. Because I've been there every single day for 6 years. Because her mother abandoned us and only came back when it was convenient." "But your financial situation?" "I work 2 jobs. I'm doing everything I can. Money isn't love. The court must consider what's best for the child. What's best for Lily is stability. What's best is a father who shows up, who cares, who puts her first every single day. That's me. That's always been me. Would it be enough? Would any of it be enough?" Marcus didn't know. He picked up Lily from Mrs. Patterson's after his shift, and they walked to the little ice cream shop 2 blocks from the apartment. It was their Saturday tradition. 1 scoop each, nothing fancy, but it was theirs. "Chocolate with rainbow sprinkles." Lily ordered, same as always. "Vanilla," Marcus said. "Plain." They sat at their usual table by the window, watching people walk by with umbrellas and raincoats. "Daddy?" Lily asked, licking her cone. "Yeah, baby." "What happens Monday?" Marcus set down his ice cream. He'd hoped she wouldn't ask. Had hoped he could shield her from the worst of it, at least until it was over. But Lily was smart. Too smart sometimes. "Monday," he said carefully, "is when the judge decides where you're going to live. And you think he'll say I can stay with you? I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that happens." Lily was quiet for a moment. Then, what if he doesn't? The question cracked something open in Marcus's chest. He reached across the table and took her hand. "Lily, I want you to listen to me. No matter what happens on Monday, no matter what any judge says, I am your father. I will always be your father. And I will never stop fighting for you. Do you understand?" She nodded, her eyes filling with tears. "I love you," Marcus said. "More than anything. More than everything. That's never going to change." "I love you too, Daddy." They finished their ice cream in silence, holding hands across the table like survivors clinging to wreckage in a storm. Sunday was for preparation. Mr. Warren came by the apartment in the afternoon to go over Marcus's testimony one more time. He was a tired-looking man in his 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes, a public defender who'd seen too many cases like this and won too few of them. "Tell me again about the morning routine," Mr. Warren said, flipping through his notes. Marcus took a deep breath. "I wake up at 5:30. Make Lily breakfast, usually oatmeal or eggs. Pack her lunch. Help her get dressed. Walk her to school by 7:45, then head to the auto shop for my 8 o'clock shift. And after school, Mrs. Patterson picks her up most days when I'm working. If I have the evening shift at the diner, I see Lily for about an hour between jobs. I help her with homework, make sure she eats dinner. And when do you get home at night? Marcus hesitated. This was the part Victoria's lawyer would hammer. Usually around midnight, sometimes later. Mr. Warren nodded slowly. And Lily is asleep by then. Bye. Yes. So on a typical day, you see your daughter for, what, 2 hours? 3? Marcus's jaw tightened. It's not about quantity. I know that. You know that. Mr. Warren set down his notepad. But the judge might not see it that way. Victoria's lawyer is going to paint a picture of an absent father too busy working to actually parent. I'm working to provide for her. I know. Mr. Warren held up a hand. I'm on your side, Marcus. But I need you to understand what we're walking into. Victoria has resources we don't have. Her lawyer is going to be polished, professional, and ruthless. We need to be prepared. Marcus leaned back in his chair, exhaustion settling into his bones. So, what do I do? You tell the truth. You show them who you are, not who their paperwork says you are. Mr. Warren leaned forward. You're a good father, Marcus. I've seen enough bad ones to know the difference. Now we just need to make the judge see it too. After Mr. Warren left, Marcus sat alone in the quiet apartment. Lily was at a friend's house, a play date arranged specifically to keep her distracted, and the silence was oppressive. He looked around at the walls he'd tried so hard to make into a home. Lily's drawings taped to the refrigerator, the shelf of second-hand books they read together every night. The framed photo on the windowsill, Marcus and Lily at the park last summer, both of them laughing at something he couldn't remember. This was his life. Small and struggling, but his. Theirs. And in less than 24 hours, a stranger in a black robe was going to decide if it was good enough. Marcus closed his eyes and thought about the twins from the storm. About their father who had everything except what mattered. About Sophie's words. I hope the judge sees what we see. He hoped so too. God, he hoped so. Marcus didn't sleep Sunday night either. He lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of Lily breathing in the next room. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Victoria's face the way she'd looked when she walked out 3 years ago, and the way she'd looked at the preliminary hearing last month. Cold, calculating, like Lily was a prize to be won, not a daughter to be loved. At 5:00 a.m., he gave up trying to sleep and got up to shower. The hot water helped a little. He stood under the spray until it ran cold, trying to wash away the exhaustion, the fear, the doubt. It didn't work, but at least he felt cleaner. He put on his only suit, a navy blue thing he'd bought at Goodwill 3 years ago for his mother's funeral. It was a little tight in the shoulders now, a little worn at the elbows, but it was all he had. He stood in front of the bathroom mirror and tried to see what the judge would see. A tired man. A poor man. A man who worked too hard and had too little to show for it. But also a father. A good father. The only parent who'd actually been there. That has to count for something, Marcus said to his reflection. It has to. He didn't sound convinced even to himself. At 6:30, he woke Lily. Hey, sweetheart, time to get up. Lily's eyes opened slowly, still heavy with sleep. Is it Monday? Yeah, baby, it's Monday. She sat up and looked at him. Really looked at him with those big brown eyes that saw too much for a 6-year-old. You're wearing your fancy clothes. I have to go to court today. Remember, Mrs. Patterson is going to take you to school and pick you up after. Lily's face crumpled. I want to go with you. I know, sweetheart, but court isn't a place for kids. It's boring, and there's a lot of waiting. He sat on the edge of her bed and took her hand. I need you to be brave today, okay? Can you do that for me? Will you come get me after? The second it's over. I promise. Lily threw her arms around his neck. "I love you, Daddy." Marcus held her tight, breathing in the smell of her strawberry shampoo. "I love you too, baby, more than anything." Mrs. Patterson arrived at 7:15. She took one look at Marcus and pulled him into a hug. "You're going to be fine," she said firmly. "That judge is going to take one look at you and see exactly what I see: a man who'd move heaven and earth for his little girl." "I hope you're right." "I'm always right. Now go. And Marcus." She waited until he met her eyes. "Don't let them see you sweat. You belong in that little girl's life, and don't you dare let anyone tell you different." Marcus kissed Lily one more time, grabbed his folder of documents, and walked out the door. The courthouse was 20 minutes away. He drove slowly, hands tight on the wheel, going over his testimony one more time in his head. The morning traffic was light, which meant he arrived 40 minutes early. He parked in the cheapest lot he could find 3 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance. The courthouse was an old building, all gray stone and tall columns, the kind of place designed to make regular people feel small. Marcus climbed the steps and pushed through the heavy doors into a lobby that smelled like floor polish and anxiety. Mr. Warren was waiting for him near the security checkpoint. "You look good," the lawyer said, though his eyes said otherwise. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm about to throw up." "That's normal. Try not to do it in the courtroom." Mr. Warren put a hand on his shoulder. "Remember what we talked about. Stay calm. Answer honestly. Don't let Davidson get under your skin. He's going to try to make you angry. Don't let him." "Davidson?" "Victoria's lawyer, Richard Davidson. He's good at what he does, which is making decent people look bad." Mr. Warren started walking toward the elevators. "Come on. Courtroom 4B, Judge Caldwell's chambers." Marcus followed, his stomach churning. "What do you know about the judge?" "Harrison Caldwell. Been on the family court bench for 18 years. Reputation for being fair but tough. He doesn't suffer fools, and he doesn't like people who waste his time." Mr. Warren pressed the elevator button. "He's also a father himself. 2 daughters, I think. Hopefully that works in our favor." The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. They stepped inside and rode up in silence. Courtroom 4B was at the end of a long hallway. The doors were heavy oak, polished to a shine that reflected Marcus's face back at him as he approached. He looked scared. He felt scared. "Ready?" Mr. Warren asked. "No." "Good. Honest answer." The lawyer pushed open the door. "Let's go." The courtroom was smaller than Marcus had expected. A few rows of wooden benches, a raised platform for the judge, 2 tables facing each other across the center aisle. It smelled like old wood and decades of human drama. Victoria was already there. She sat at the table on the right, dressed in a navy blue dress that probably cost more than Marcus made in a month. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her posture straight and confident. She looked like exactly what she was trying to convince the court: she'd become a responsible, put-together woman who deserved to have her daughter back. She didn't look at Marcus as he walked in, didn't acknowledge him at all. Just kept her eyes forward, hands folded on the table in front of her. Beside her sat a man in a suit that screamed expensive. Richard Davidson. He was in his 50s, silver-haired, with the kind of easy confidence that came from winning more cases than he lost. He glanced up as Marcus entered and offered a small, cold smile that said, "I've already won this." Marcus took his seat at the left table, his heart pounding. "Don't let them intimidate you," Mr. Warren whispered, opening his briefcase. "They want you rattled. Don't give them the satisfaction." "Easy for you to say." "I know. But you've got something they don't have." "What's that?" "The truth." They sat in silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only 15 minutes. Marcus could feel Victoria's presence across the aisle, could almost hear her thoughts. "You can't win this. You're nothing. You've always been nothing." She'd said those words to him once the night she left. He'd never forgotten them. At 9:00 exactly, the bailiff entered through a side door. All rise. The Honorable Judge Harrison Caldwell presiding. Marcus stood, his legs unsteady. This was it. The moment that would decide everything. The door behind the bench opened, and Marcus's heart stopped. The man who walked in was tall and distinguished, in his late 50s, with silver hair and sharp eyes that swept across the courtroom like searchlights. He wore the black robes of his office like a king wearing a crown, natural, authoritative, unquestionable. But it wasn't the robes that made Marcus's blood run cold. It was the face. Those eyes. That jawline. That particular way of moving, confident but controlled. Marcus had seen those features before. 3 nights ago, in the rain. On 2 young women standing beside a broken-down Mercedes, soaking wet and scared. Sophie and Maya. This was their father. Judge Harrison Caldwell. The man who was about to decide if Marcus deserved to keep his daughter was the father of the girls Marcus had helped in the storm. The courtroom seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the edge of the table to keep himself upright. His mind raced through the implications, the possibilities, the terrible uncertainty of what this meant. Was this good? Bad? Would the judge recuse himself? Would he remember Marcus at all? Would he hold it against him? Somehow think it was manipulation, some kind of setup. The judge took his seat, adjusting his glasses as he opened the case file. His eyes scanned the first page, and Marcus saw at the slightest pause. A flicker of something crossing that stern face. Then the judge's gaze lifted, sweeping across the courtroom until it landed directly on Marcus. Recognition. It passed between them like an electric current, silent, invisible, but undeniably there. The judge knew. He remembered. Marcus couldn't breathe. "Good morning," Judge Caldwell said, his voice steady and authoritative. "We're here today for the custody hearing of Lily Marie Reed, minor child. Counselors, are both parties ready to proceed?" "Yes, Your Honor." Davidson's voice was smooth, confident. "Ready, Your Honor." Mr. Warren sounded less sure. The judge nodded slowly, but Marcus could see something working behind his eyes. A calculation. A decision being made in real time. "Before we begin," Judge Caldwell said, "I'd like to call for a brief recess, 15 minutes. The bailiff looked confused. "Your Honor." 15 minutes, the judge repeated. "We'll reconvene shortly." "All rise." Everyone stood as Judge Caldwell exited through the back door. The moment he was gone, the courtroom erupted in confused whispers. Davidson leaned over to Victoria, speaking rapidly in her ear. Victoria's eyes narrowed, suspicious. Mr. Warren turned to Marcus. "That's unusual. Did something happen?" Marcus couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely. "Marcus, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I know him," Marcus managed to choke out. "What? You know the judge?" "Not exactly. Marcus ran a hand over his face. "It's complicated." Before he could explain, the bailiff approached their table. "Mr. Reed." Marcus looked up. "The judge would like to see you in his chambers." Victoria's head snapped around. "Excuse me, on what grounds?" "Just Mr. Reed," the bailiff said firmly. Davidson was on his feet immediately. "Your Honor, I mean, this is highly irregular. We object to any private conversation between the judge and opposing counsel's client." "The judge didn't ask for your opinion, counselor." The bailiff's voice was stone. "Mr. Reed, please follow me." Marcus stood on legs that felt like they might give out at any moment. Mr. Warren grabbed his arm. "Whatever he asks you, be honest. Don't try to be clever, just honest. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded. "Go." He followed the bailiff through a side door, down a narrow hallway lined with portraits of stern-faced judges from decades past, and stopped in front of an oak door with a brass nameplate, Honorable Harrison Caldwell. The bailiff knocked once, then opened the door. "Mr. Reed, Your Honor." "Thank you. That will be all." Marcus stepped inside, and the door closed behind him. The judge's chambers were smaller than Marcus had expected. Wood-paneled walls lined with law books, a heavy desk covered in files and papers, 2 leather chairs facing it. A window looked out over the city, gray morning light filtering through half-closed blinds. Judge Caldwell stood by that window, hands clasped behind his back, staring at something only he could see. "Sit down, Mr. Reed," he said without turning around. Marcus sat. The leather chair creaked under his weight. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat loud as a drum in the quiet room. Then the judge turned. His face was unreadable, that same stern expression he'd worn on the bench. But there was something else there too. Something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "3 nights ago," Judge Caldwell said slowly, "my daughters called me from a hotel. They were stranded on Highway 89 in the middle of a terrible storm. Their car had broken down and they'd been standing in the rain for over an hour." He paused. No one stopped. No one helped. Marcus's mouth went dry. "Until you did." "Your Honor, The judge held up a hand. "Let me finish." Marcus closed his mouth. "They told me about you." Judge Caldwell walked to his desk and sat down, folding his hands on the surface. "About your kindness. About how you had every reason to keep driving. You were exhausted. You had your own problems, but you stopped anyway. You gave them a ride. You made sure they were safe." He leaned back in his chair. "They also told me about your daughter. About this custody battle. About how you're fighting to keep her against a system that seems determined to take her away." "Your Honor, I swear I didn't know who they were. I had no idea." "I know you didn't." The judge's voice softened just slightly. "That's exactly my point, Mr. Reed. You didn't know. You helped 2 strangers in a storm with absolutely nothing to gain from it. You did it because it was the right thing to do." Marcus didn't know what to say. He sat there frozen, waiting. "I have a dilemma," Judge Caldwell continued. "I know who you are now. I know you helped my daughters when no one else would. And that creates a problem. A conflict of interest, some might say. Are you going to recuse yourself?" The question came out before Marcus could stop it. The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. "Is that what you want?" Marcus hesitated. "I don't know. I just want a fair hearing. I just want a chance to prove that I'm a good father. That's all I've ever wanted." Judge Caldwell studied him for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it transformed his face, made him look less like a judge and more like a father. "I'm not going to recuse myself, Mr. Reed." Marcus blinked. "You're not?" "No, because after my daughters told me about you, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what they said about this man who stopped in a storm, who helped strangers when he had every reason not to. So I did something I don't usually do." He pulled a folder from his desk drawer and laid it on the surface between them. "I read your case file. Every page, every document, every accusation your ex-wife has made against you." Marcus's stomach dropped. And I found something interesting." The judge opened the folder. "Your ex-wife claims you're financially unstable, that you work too much, that you can't provide a proper home for Lily. But do you know what she hasn't provided?" Marcus shook his head. "Evidence." Judge Caldwell looked up, his eyes sharp. "Not a single piece of evidence showing neglect. Not a single piece showing abuse. Not a single piece showing that Lily is anything other than a happy, healthy, well-loved child." He flipped through the pages. "What Mrs. Reed has provided is a lot of opinions about what a father should be able to afford, about what kind of house a child should live in, about how many hours a parent should work." His voice hardened. "She's provided judgments, Mr. Reed, not facts." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, something that had been wound tight for months. "I also made some calls," the judge continued. "Off the record. To Lily's school. To your neighbors? To the parents of her classmates? He paused. Do you want to know what they told me? Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. They told me you never miss a parent-teacher conference, that you volunteer for field trips even when you're working double shifts, that Lily talks about you constantly about the bedtime stories you make up just for her about the park you take her to every Sunday, about how you teach her to be kind and brave and good. The judge's voice grew quiet. They told me she's a happy child, Mr. Reed, a happy child who loves her father. Tears burned behind Marcus's eyes, but he refused to let them fall. Not here, not now. There's something else, Judge Caldwell said. Something that wasn't in your file. Something your ex-wife's lawyer was very careful to avoid mentioning. He pulled another document from the folder. I had someone look into Victoria Reed's background more thoroughly. Would you like to know what they found? Marcus's heart was pounding. What? Your ex-wife has been arrested twice in the past year. Cocaine possession. Both charges were dropped due to technicalities, but the arrests are on record. The judge slid the document across the desk. She was also fired from her job 3 months ago. The reason showing up to work intoxicated, repeatedly. Marcus stared at the paper. He couldn't believe what he was reading. Victoria had always been wild. That was part of what had attracted him to her in the beginning. But drugs he'd never known, never suspected. This is a full investigation report, Judge Caldwell said. Drug tests, witness statements, documentation of erratic behavior. It's all there. Why are you telling me this? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. You could let this come out in court. Let the process work. I could. The judge leaned forward. But I'm telling you now because I want you to understand something, Mr. Reed. I'm not doing this because you helped my daughters. I'm not ruling in your favor because I owe you something. He held Marcus's gaze, his eyes intense. I'm doing this because it's right. Because your ex-wife has been lying to this court, and I'm going to make sure the truth comes out. Because a little girl deserves to stay with a father who loves her, not be handed over to a mother who can't even take care of herself. Marcus couldn't hold it back anymore. A single tear slipped down his cheek. My daughters told me something, Judge Caldwell said softly. They said Lily is lucky, that she has the kind of father they wish they'd had. He stood up and walked around the desk. They were right. I wasn't there for them when they were growing up. I was too busy with my career, too focused on success. I told myself I was providing for them, but what I was really doing was hiding from them. He stopped in front of Marcus's chair. You're not hiding, Mr. Reed. You're fighting. You're working yourself to the bone, not because you're avoiding your daughter, but because you're trying to give her a life. That's the difference. That's what matters. Marcus looked up at him through blurred vision. Thank you, he managed. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Judge Caldwell walked to the door. We still have to go back out there and do this properly. Davidson is going to object. He's going to argue. Your ex-wife is going to cry and plead and say whatever she thinks will help her case. He opened the door. But the facts don't lie, Mr. Reed, and neither does character. He paused. Let's go finish this. Marcus wiped his face with the back of his hand and stood up. His legs were still shaky, but something had changed. The weight he'd been carrying for months, the fear, the doubt, the crushing certainty that he was going to lose it, was lifting. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Marcus Reed felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Hope. They walked back into the courtroom together. Victoria's eyes were sharp, suspicious, tracking Marcus as he returned to his seat. Davidson was already on his feet, ready to object to something, anything. All rise, the bailiff called. Judge Caldwell took his place behind the bench. He picked up the folder, the one he'd shown Marcus in chambers, and set it in front of him. Before we hear opening statements, he said, his voice filling the courtroom. The court has received new information relevant to this case. Information that was not disclosed by the petitioner's counsel. Davidson stood immediately. Your Honor, What information? We weren't notified of any new evidence. Sit down, Mr. Davidson. The lawyer hesitated, then slowly sank back into his chair. You weren't notified, Judge Caldwell continued, because your client deliberately concealed it. Victoria's face went pale. Mrs. Reed. The judge looked directly at her, and even from across the room Marcus could feel the weight of that gaze. You've presented yourself to this court as a stable, responsible parent seeking to protect your daughter from an unfit father, but you failed to mention several relevant facts. He opened the folder. You failed to mention your 2 arrests for cocaine possession. You failed to mention being terminated from your employment for intoxication. You failed to mention that you are currently under investigation by social services. The courtroom exploded. Davidson was on his feet shouting objections. Victoria was shaking her head, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Warren grabbed Marcus's arm, his eyes wide with shock. Order! Judge Caldwell slammed his gavel. Order in this courtroom. The noise died down, but the tension remained thick, electric, suffocating. Your Honor. Davidson's voice was strained, barely controlled. These charges were dropped. This is character assassination, pure and simple. My client. Your client lied to this court. Judge Caldwell's voice was ice. The charges were dropped on technicalities. The arrests remain on record. The drug tests remain positive. The witness statements remain documented. He held up the folder. This is a full investigation report, Mr. Davidson, completed by Social Services at my request. It confirms everything I've just said and more. Davidson's face had gone gray. He glanced at Victoria, and Marcus saw something pass between them. Panic. The realization that their carefully constructed case was falling apart. Your Honor, I request a continuance to review this new evidence. Denied. The judge set down the folder. This hearing will proceed, and when it's over, I will issue my ruling. He looked at Marcus, and just for a moment, something passed between them. Not recognition, they were past that now. Something else. Respect. Mr. Warren, Judge Caldwell said, you may begin your opening statement. Mr. Warren stood slowly, straightening his tie with hands that trembled slightly. Marcus could see the surprise still written on his face. The revelation about Victoria had caught him as off guard as everyone else. But the lawyer was a professional. He gathered himself, took a breath, and walked toward the judge's bench. Your Honor, he began, this case was supposed to be about money. About bank accounts and square footage and all the material things our society uses to measure a person's worth. Mrs. Reed's counsel would have you believe that Marcus Reed is unfit to raise his daughter because he's poor, because he works 2 jobs, because he lives in a small apartment and drives an old car. He paused, letting the words settle. But that's not what makes a father, Your Honor. What makes a father is showing up. What makes a father is being there day after day, year after year, even when it's hard, even when you're exhausted, even when the world seems determined to break you down. Mr. Warren turned to look at Marcus. Marcus Reed has been Lily's only parent for 3 years. 3 years, Your Honor. Her mother left when Lily was 3 years old, and she didn't look back. No calls, no letters, no support, nothing. And in all that time, Marcus never missed a single day. He worked double shifts to pay the bills. He walked Lily to school every morning. He read her bedtime stories every night. He was there. He turned back to the judge, and now after 3 years of silence, Victoria Reed has returned. She has a new boyfriend with money, a fancy lawyer, and a sudden interest in the daughter she abandoned. But she doesn't want Lily because she loves her. She wants Lily because she wants to win. Because taking Lily away from Marcus is the ultimate victory in a battle she started the day she walked out that door. Davidson was on his feet. Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is speculating about my client's motives. Sustained. Judge Caldwell nodded. Mr. Warren, stick to the facts. The facts, Your Honor, are these. Mr. Warren picked up a folder from his table. Lily Reed is a straight-A student. She has perfect attendance. Her teachers describe her as happy, well-adjusted, and kind. The parents of her classmates call her a joy to be around. He opened the folder. I have here letters from Lily's teacher, her school principal, her pediatrician, and 6 of her neighbors, all testifying that Marcus Reed is an exceptional father. Not despite his circumstances, Your Honor, but because of them. Because he fights for his daughter every single day. Mr. Warren closed the folder. The evidence Mrs. Reed's counsel planned to present was designed to make Marcus look bad on paper. But paper doesn't tell the whole story. Paper doesn't show love. Paper doesn't show sacrifice. Paper doesn't show a father who works himself to exhaustion just so his daughter can have a better life. He walked back to his seat. We ask the court to see what the numbers can't show. We ask the court to recognize that being poor is not a crime and loving your child is not a weakness. We ask the court to keep Lily exactly where she belongs, with the father who has never ever let her down. Mr. Warren sat down. Marcus felt a surge of gratitude so intense it nearly choked him. He hadn't expected that. Hadn't known his public defender had it in him. Judge Caldwell nodded. Mr. Davidson, your opening statement. Davidson rose smoothly, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. Whatever shock he'd felt at the judge's revelations, he'd buried it deep. His face was calm, confident, almost amused. Your Honor, he said, opposing counsel has given us a very pretty speech. Lots of emotion, lots of heartstring pulling. But let's talk about reality. He walked toward the center of the courtroom. The reality is that Marcus Reed works 14-hour days. The reality is that his daughter spends more time with a neighbor than with him. The reality is that he lives in a 1-bedroom apartment where he sleeps on the couch because there's no room for him to have his own bed. Davidson spread his hands. Is he a bad person? No. Does he love his daughter? I'm sure he does. But love isn't enough. Your Honor, love doesn't pay for college. Love doesn't provide stability. Love doesn't give a child the opportunities she deserves. He glanced at Victoria. My client made mistakes. She freely admits that. 3 years ago, she was struggling with personal issues, and she made the painful decision to step away. She's not proud of it. But she's also not the same person she was then. Marcus nearly laughed out loud. Personal issues. That was one way to describe abandoning your 3-year-old daughter without a word. Victoria Reed has rebuilt her life, Davidson continued. She has a stable home, a stable income, a partner who is prepared to help provide for Lily. She can offer her daughter things Marcus Reed simply cannot. A good school district, extracurricular activities, a future. He turned to face Marcus directly. And yes, there have been some incidents in the past year. My client has struggled with certain challenges, but she has addressed those challenges, Your Honor. She is in recovery, she is getting help, and she deserves the chance to be a mother again. Davidson walked back to his seat. We ask the court to consider what's truly best for this child. Not what feels good, not what makes a nice story, but what gives Lily the best chance at a successful life. Thank you. He sat down, and Victoria reached over to squeeze his hand. The gesture made Marcus's stomach turn. Judge Caldwell made a note on his legal pad. Thank you, counsel. We'll now hear testimony. Mr. Warren, call your first witness. The defense calls Marcus Reed. Marcus stood. His legs felt like jelly, but he forced himself to walk to the witness stand. He raised his right hand, swore to tell the truth, and sat down in the hard wooden chair. Mr. Warren approached him with an encouraging nod. Mr. Reed, can you describe your typical day? Marcus took a breath. I wake up at 5:30 every morning. I make Lily breakfast, usually oatmeal or eggs, whatever we have. I pack her lunch, help her get dressed, and walk her to school by 7:45. Then I go to my first job at Patterson's Auto. I work there until 4, sometimes later if there's extra work. And after that, I pick up Lily from Mrs. Patterson's. She's our neighbor who watches her after school. We have about an hour together. I help her with homework, make her dinner, talk about her day. Then I go to my second job at the diner. I work there until midnight, sometimes later. And when you get home, Marcus's throat tightened. I check on Lily. She's always asleep by then, but I sit with her for a few minutes. I tell her I love her even though she can't hear me. Then I sleep on the couch for a few hours before it starts all over again. Why 2 jobs, Mr. Reed? Because one isn't enough. Marcus's voice was steady, but his eyes burned. Because rent is expensive. Because food is expensive. Because everything costs money and I don't have enough of it. But I do what I have to do. For Lily. Everything I do is for Lily. Can you tell the court about your relationship with your daughter? Marcus felt the tears threatening again, but he pushed them back. Lily is my whole world. She's the reason I get up in the morning. The reason I work until I can barely stand. She's smart and funny and kind, and every single day with her is a gift. He looked directly at Judge Caldwell. I know I'm not perfect. I know I can't give her everything she deserves. But I love her, Your Honor. I love her more than anything. And I will never ever abandon her. Not like her mother did. Objection. Davidson didn't even stand up. Inflammatory. Withdrawn, Mr. Warren said. No further questions. Davidson rose and approached the witness stand with a predatory smile. Mr. Reed, you said you work until midnight most nights, is that correct? Yes. And Lily is asleep by the time you get home? Yes. So in a typical day, how many waking hours do you actually spend with your daughter? Marcus hesitated. About 2 hours, sometimes 3. 2 hours. Davidson nodded slowly. And who takes care of Lily during all those other hours? Mrs. Patterson, our neighbor. An elderly woman who is not a licensed child care provider. She's a retired teacher. She's wonderful with Lily. But she's not Lily's parent, is she? No. Mr. Reed, you live in a 1-bedroom apartment. Is that correct? Yes. And you sleep on the couch. Lily has the bedroom. So there's no room for you in your own home. Marcus felt his temper rising. There's plenty of room for us. We don't need much. But Lily doesn't have her own space, does she? No playroom, no yard, no... She has love. Marcus cut him off. She has a father who would die for her. That's more than your client ever gave her. Mr. Reed. You want to talk about space, about money, about all the things I can't afford. Marcus was on his feet now, anger finally breaking through. Your client had all those things, a big house, a nice car, money in the bank. And she still walked out. She still abandoned her daughter. So don't stand there and tell me that my apartment is too small or my bank account is too empty because I've been there every single day. Every single day. Where was Victoria? Mr. Reed, please sit down. Judge Caldwell's voice was calm but firm. Marcus realized he was standing, his hands gripping the rail of the witness box. He forced himself to sit, his heart pounding. I apologize, Your Honor. Mr. Davidson, do you have any more questions? Davidson looked rattled. Marcus's outburst had clearly thrown him off his game. No further questions. You may step down, Mr. Reed. Marcus returned to his seat, his legs shaking. Mr. Warren leaned over. That wasn't part of the plan, he whispered. But it might have actually helped. You showed them who you really are. I lost my temper. You showed passion. There's a difference. Judge Caldwell made another note. Mr. Davidson, call your witness. The petitioner calls Victoria Reed. Victoria stood and walked to the witness stand. Her movements were graceful, controlled like she'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. She swore her oath and sat down, smoothing her dress over her knees. Davidson approached her with a gentle smile. Mrs. Reed, can you tell the court why you left 3 years ago? Victoria's eyes welled with tears. Marcus had seen this before. The way she could cry on command, could make herself look vulnerable and sympathetic whenever it suited her. I was struggling, she said, her voice breaking. I was dealing with depression, with anxiety. I felt like I was drowning, and I made the terrible decision to walk away. Do you regret that decision? Every single day. She looked at Marcus, and her eyes seemed almost sincere. Almost. I know I hurt them. I know I abandoned them when they needed me most. But I wasn't well, Mr. Davidson. I wasn't capable of being the mother Lily deserved. And now I've gotten help. I've been in therapy for 2 years. I've worked on myself, addressed my issues. She sat up straighter. I'm not the same person who walked out that door. I'm stronger now. I'm ready to be a mother. What can you offer Lily that she doesn't currently have? Stability, security, a home with more than one room, a neighborhood with good schools, opportunities, dance lessons, music classes, summer camps. All the things children deserve. And you have the means to provide these things? Yes, my partner David is very successful. He's prepared to help support Lily in every way. Marcus felt sick. She was selling their daughter like a commodity, listing off material goods as if they were more important than love. Thank you, Mrs. Reed. Davidson returned to his seat. Your witness. Mr. Warren stood slowly. He looked at Victoria for a long moment, and something in his expression made her shift uncomfortably. Mrs. Reed, you said you left because you were struggling with depression and anxiety. Is that correct? Yes. And you sought treatment for these conditions? Victoria hesitated. Eventually, yes. Eventually. Mr. Warren nodded. But not immediately. In fact, for the first 2 years after you left, you received no mental health treatment at all. Isn't that true? I wasn't ready. Or perhaps you weren't struggling with depression at all. Perhaps you left for other reasons entirely. Davidson stood. Objection. Speculation. I'll rephrase. Mr. Warren picked up a document from his table. Mrs. Reed, where did you go when you left your husband and daughter? Victoria's face tightened. I went to stay with friends. Which friends? Various people. I moved around a lot. Did any of these friends include a man named Derek Vance? The color drained from Victoria's face. Marcus sat up straighter. He'd never heard that name before. Yes, I knew Derek. Knew him how? Victoria glanced at Davidson, panic in her eyes. Her lawyer started to rise, but she answered before he could object. We were in a relationship. So you left your husband and 3-year-old daughter to be with another man. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Mrs. Reed? Victoria's tears were real now, but they weren't the sympathetic kind. They were the tears of someone watching their carefully constructed story fall apart. I was unhappy in my marriage, she said, her voice hardening. I felt trapped. Derek offered me a way out. And Lily, your 3-year-old daughter. What did Derek offer her? He wasn't interested in children. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry, could you repeat that? He wasn't interested in children. Louder now, defiant. He didn't want Lily around, so I left her with Marcus. The courtroom went silent. Marcus felt like he'd been punched in the gut. All this time he'd wondered why Victoria had left. He'd assumed it was something he'd done, something he'd failed at. But it was never about him at all. It was about a man who didn't want to be bothered with a child. She'd chosen a boyfriend over her own daughter. Mrs. Reed. Mr. Warren continued, his voice cold. You said earlier that you've been in recovery for various challenges. Can you tell the court what those challenges are? Davidson jumped up. Your Honor, this is not relevant. It's directly relevant to the petitioner's fitness as a parent. Mr. Warren turned to the judge. And I believe the court has already received evidence on this matter. Judge Caldwell nodded. Overruled. The witness will answer. Victoria looked trapped. She glanced at Davidson, at Marcus, at the judge, finding no escape anywhere. I had some issues with substances, she finally said. Some issues. Mr. Warren picked up another document. According to this police report, you were arrested on March 15th of last year for possession of cocaine. The charges were dropped due to a procedural error, but the arrest remains on record. Is that correct? Yes. And on July 28th you were arrested again. Same charge, same outcome. Is that correct? Yes. Victoria's voice was barely audible. And on September 3rd, you were terminated from your position at Morrison Financial for showing up to work intoxicated, multiple times. Is that correct? I was going through a difficult period. Is that correct, Mrs. Reed? Yes. Mr. Warren set down the documents. So let me understand. You abandoned your daughter 3 years ago to be with a man who didn't want her around. You've been arrested twice for drug possession in the past year. You've been fired from your job for intoxication. And now you're standing in this courtroom asking to take custody of the child you left behind because you found another man with money who might be willing to support you. That's not fair. What's not fair? Mrs. Reed, is what you've put your daughter through, what you've put your ex-husband through, what you're trying to do right now. Mr. Warren turned to the judge. Your Honor, Victoria Reed is not a fit parent. She hasn't been a parent at all for 3 years. She abandoned her child for a boyfriend, developed a drug problem, lost her job, and now she's trying to use another wealthy partner to buy custody of a daughter she doesn't deserve. He walked back to his seat. Marcus Reed may not have money. He may not have a big house or a fancy car, but he has something Victoria Reed has never had: the ability to put his daughter first. Every single day, without fail, without excuses, without abandonment. That's what matters. That's the only thing that matters. Mr. Warren sat down. The courtroom was silent. Victoria sat in the witness box, her mascara running, her perfect composure shattered. Davidson was staring at his notes, clearly trying to figure out how to salvage the situation. You may step down, Mrs. Reed, Judge Caldwell said. Victoria walked back to her seat, her legs unsteady. She didn't look at Marcus, didn't look at anyone. Judge Caldwell closed his folder and removed his glasses. This court will now issue its ruling. Marcus's heart stopped. He'd expected deliberation, expected the judge to retire to his chambers and make them wait for hours, days, maybe weeks. But Judge Caldwell was going to decide right now. I've reviewed all the evidence in this case, the judge said. I've heard the testimony of both parties, and I've considered what's truly in the best interest of Lily Marie Reed. He looked at Victoria. Mrs. Reed, you've presented yourself as a changed woman, a woman who made mistakes but has learned from them. But the evidence tells a different story. You left your daughter, not because you were struggling with mental health issues, but because you chose a man over your child. You've struggled with substance abuse. You've lost your job, and you've come to this court with a story full of half-truths and omissions. He turned to Marcus. Mr. Reed, you've worked 2 jobs for 3 years to provide for your daughter. You've sacrificed sleep, comfort, and any semblance of a personal life to ensure she has what she needs. You've never missed a school event, never failed to be there when it mattered. Your daughter's teachers, neighbors, and friends all speak of you with nothing but respect and admiration. Judge Caldwell put his glasses back on. The law is clear that custody decisions must be based on the best interest of the child. And in this case, the best interest of Lily Reed is to remain with the father who has been her only real parent for the past 3 years. He picked up his gavel. This court awards full custody of Lily Marie Reed to her father, Marcus Reed. Mrs. Reed will be permitted supervised visitation contingent upon completion of a certified rehabilitation program and clean drug tests for a minimum of 6 months. The gavel came down. This hearing is adjourned. Marcus couldn't move. The words echoed in his head, full custody, full custody, full custody, but they didn't seem real. Nothing seemed real. Mr. Warren grabbed his arm. Marcus, Marcus, we won. Do you understand? We won. Marcus looked at him. It's over. It's over. Lily stays with you. She's yours. And then it hit him. All at once, like a wave crashing over his head. He'd won. He'd actually won. Lily wasn't going anywhere. She was staying with him where she belonged, where she'd always belonged. Marcus put his head in his hands and wept. He didn't care that people were watching. didn't care that Davidson was gathering his papers with barely contained fury, that Victoria was sobbing at her table, that the bailiff was announcing something about clearing the courtroom. None of it mattered. All that mattered was Lily, his little girl, his whole world. She was staying with him. Mr. Warren pulled him to his feet and guided him toward the door. "Come on, let's get you out of here. You've got a daughter to see." They walked out of the courtroom past Victoria, who wouldn't meet his eyes, past Davidson, who looked like he wanted to put his fist through a wall, past the bailiff and the court reporter and all the other people who'd just witnessed the most important moment of Marcus's life. In the hallway, Marcus stopped. "Wait," he said. I should... He turned and looked back at the courtroom doors. Through the small window he could see Judge Caldwell still at his bench gathering his papers. "Give me a minute," Marcus said. He walked back and pushed open the door. Judge Caldwell looked up. "Mr. Reed, is there something else?" Marcus stood in the aisle, suddenly unsure what to say. All the words he'd rehearsed, all the gratitude he wanted to express, seemed inadequate. "I just wanted to thank you," he finally managed, "for seeing the truth, for giving me a chance." Judge Caldwell set down his papers. "I didn't give you anything, Mr. Reed. You earned this, every bit of it. But if you hadn't looked into Victoria's background, if you hadn't found that evidence, I did my job." The judge stood. Nothing more, nothing less. He walked down from the bench and approached Marcus, his black robe swishing against the floor. "But I will tell you something off the record." He stopped a few feet away. "3 nights ago, you made a choice. You chose to stop for 2 strangers in a storm when you had every reason to keep driving. You chose kindness over convenience, compassion over self-interest." He put a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "That choice told me more about your character than any background check ever could. My daughters saw it, and when they told me about you, I saw it too." Marcus felt fresh tears threatening. "Your daughters, Sophie and Maya, they were kind to me. They listened. They said things that gave me hope when I had none. They're good girls." Judge Caldwell's voice softened. "Better than I deserve, honestly. I wasn't there for them the way I should have been. I made the same mistake Victoria made, choosing other things over my children. I was just luckier. They forgave me." "They still love you," Marcus said. "I could tell. They're not angry. They're just lonely." "I know." The judge's eyes glistened. "And I'm going to fix that, starting now." He extended his hand. "Good luck, Mr. Reed. Take care of that little girl." Marcus shook it firmly. "I will. Thank you, Your Honor, for everything." He walked out of the courtroom for the last time, leaving behind the fear and doubt and desperation that had brought him there. The hallway was empty now, but Mr. Warren was waiting by the elevators. "Everything okay?" the lawyer asked. "Everything's perfect." They rode down in silence. Marcus watched the floor numbers decrease, each one bringing him closer to Lily. Closer to the life he'd fought so hard to keep. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Mr. Warren turned to him. "You know, in 23 years of practicing law, I've never seen anything like what happened in there today." "What do you mean?" "I mean that judge." Mr. Warren shook his head. "He didn't just rule in your favor. He believed in you. Personally. That's rare, Marcus. Rarer than you know." Marcus thought about the storm, about Sophie and Maya shivering by the side of the road, about the choice he'd made without knowing where it would lead. "I got lucky," he said. "You made your own luck." Mr. Warren clapped him on the shoulder. "Now go see your daughter. She's been waiting long enough." Marcus walked out of the courthouse into brilliant sunshine. The storm was over. Marcus drove faster than he should have. His hands were still shaking on the wheel, his heart still pounding from everything that had happened in that courtroom. Full custody. The words kept repeating in his head like a song he couldn't stop singing. Full custody. Lily was staying with him, forever. He ran 2 yellow lights and barely stopped at a third. The apartment was only 20 minutes from the courthouse, but it felt like hours. Every red light was an eternity, Every slow driver in front of him was a personal insult. Finally, he pulled into the parking lot of his apartment complex. He didn't bother finding a proper spot. Just stopped the car crooked across 2 spaces and jumped out, leaving the door hanging open behind him. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his lungs burning, his legs screaming. 2nd floor, 3rd door on the left. He fumbled with his keys, dropped them, picked them up, finally got the right one in the lock. The door flew open. Mrs. Patterson looked up from the couch, startled. "Marcus, what on earth? Where's Lily?" "She's in her room." "Marcus, what happened? Is everything?" But Marcus was already moving. Crossing the small living room in 3 strides, pushing open the bedroom door. Lily was sitting on her bed, her coloring books spread around her. She looked up when the door opened, and Marcus saw the fear in her eyes. The same fear she'd been carrying for weeks. The fear of losing her father, of being taken away to live with a mother she barely remembered. "Daddy." Marcus dropped to his knees beside the bed. He couldn't speak, couldn't find the words. So he just opened his arms. Lily flew into them. "Daddy, what happened?" "Why are you crying, Daddy?" Marcus held her so tight he thought he might never let go. The tears were coming fast now, streaming down his face, soaking into her hair. But they weren't tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of relief, of joy, of a weight finally being lifted. "You're staying with me," he whispered into her hair. "You're staying with me, baby. Forever. The judge said you're mine." Lily pulled back, her eyes wide. "Really? I don't have to go live with Mommy?" "No, sweetheart. You're staying right here, with me, where you belong. Forever. Forever and ever and ever." Lily's face crumpled, and then she was crying, too big, heaving sobs that shook her whole little body. But she was smiling through the tears, laughing and crying at the same time. "I was so scared, Daddy. I was so scared you wouldn't come back." "I will always come back." Marcus cupped her face in his hands. "Do you hear me? Always. No matter what. I will always come back for you." Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway, her hand pressed to her chest. "You won?" Marcus looked up at her, still holding Lily. "We won." The old woman burst into tears. "Oh, thank the Lord! Thank the Lord!" She shuffled over and wrapped her arms around both of them, creating a little huddle of crying, laughing, relieved people in the middle of Lily's tiny bedroom. It should have felt cramped. It felt like the whole world. "I knew it," Mrs. Patterson said, wiping her eyes. "I knew that judge would see the truth. I told you, didn't I? I told you everything would be all right." "You did." Marcus reached up and squeezed her hand. "Thank you. For everything. For watching Lily. For believing in me. For all of it." "Oh, hush. You don't owe me any thanks." She squeezed back. "That little girl is lucky to have you. And don't you ever let anyone tell you different." Lily tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby. Can we have ice cream?" Marcus laughed, a real, genuine laugh that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him. "We can have all the ice cream in the world." They went to their usual spot, the little shop with the red awning 2 blocks from the apartment. The owner, a heavy-set man named Sal, who'd known Marcus for years, took one look at their faces and knew something had changed. "Good news?" he asked. "The best news." Marcus couldn't stop smiling. "The very best." Sal nodded slowly, a grin spreading across his face. "Ice cream's on the house today." "You don't have to." "I want to." Sal was already scooping. "Chocolate with rainbow sprinkles for the little one, right? And vanilla for you." "You remembered." "I remember all my regulars." He handed the cones across the counter. "Congratulations, Marcus. Whatever happened, you deserve it." They sat at their usual table by the window, watching people walk by. The sun was still shining warm and bright, and everything felt different. The same street, the same shop, the same wobbly table they always sat at, but different. Better. Like the whole world had shifted slightly and suddenly fit together in a way it hadn't before. "Daddy?" Lily said between licks of her ice cream. "Yeah? What's going to happen now?" Marcus considered the question. What was going to happen? For months, his entire life had been focused on the custody hearing. Every decision, every sacrifice, every exhausting double shift, all of it aimed at one goal: keeping Lily. And now that goal was achieved. What came next? "Now," he said slowly, "we live. We go to school. We eat dinner together. We read bedtime stories. We just live. But you'll still work a lot." The question hit harder than Marcus expected, because she was right. Even with custody secured, nothing had really changed about their day-to-day life. He still had 2 jobs. He still worked 14-hour days. He still barely saw his daughter during the week. "Yeah," he admitted, "I'll still work a lot, but I'm going to try to do better. Find more time for us. Okay?" Lily nodded, but there was something in her eyes and understanding beyond her years. "It's okay, Daddy. I know you work because you love me." Marcus's throat tightened. "How'd you get so smart, huh?" "Mrs. Patterson says I get it from you." Mrs. Patterson is a wise woman. They finished their ice cream and walked home hand in hand. The afternoon stretched out ahead of them. No work tonight, no obligations, no court hearings hanging over their heads. Just a father and his daughter together. At the apartment, Marcus found his phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. He'd left it there that morning, too focused on the hearing to worry about calls or texts. Now it showed 3 missed calls and 2 voicemails. The first voicemail was from Mr. Warren. "Marcus, it's David Warren. Just wanted to say congratulations again. You should be proud of yourself. Take some time to celebrate with that little girl. You've earned it." The second voicemail made Marcus's heart skip. "Mr. Reed, this is Benjamin Caldwell." The judge's voice was different outside the courtroom, warmer, more human. "I hope I'm not overstepping, but my daughters have been asking about you since we spoke this morning. They'd very much like to see you again, to thank you properly for what you did that night in the storm." There was a pause on the recording. "I know this is unusual given the circumstances, but if you're willing, we'd like to invite you and Lily to dinner at our home this Saturday, 7 o'clock. Sophie will text you the address. And Marcus." Another pause. "I meant what I said. You're a good man. I hope you'll give us the chance to show our gratitude." The message ended. Marcus stared at the phone, not quite believing what he'd heard. The judge, the man who'd just changed his entire life, was inviting him to dinner. His daughters, the 2 strangers he'd helped in a rainstorm, wanted to thank him. A week ago, he'd been a broke mechanic fighting to keep his daughter. Now he was being invited to dinner at what was probably a mansion in the hills. "Daddy, who was that?" Marcus looked down at Lily, who'd appeared at his elbow. "Some friends," he said. "They want to have us over for dinner this weekend." "What friends?" Marcus smiled. "New ones. I think you're going to like them." The rest of the week passed in a blur. Marcus went back to work on Tuesday, but something had shifted. The exhaustion was still there, would probably always be there, but it didn't feel as crushing anymore. The fear that had been his constant companion for months was gone, replaced by something lighter, something that felt almost like peace. At the auto shop, the guys threw him a small celebration. Patterson himself, the old man who'd owned the place for 40 years, pulled Marcus aside and pressed an envelope into his hand. "What's this?" "A bonus." Patterson's gruff voice didn't quite hide the emotion underneath. "You've been working your tail off for 3 years, son. Never complained, never called in sick, never gave me anything less than your best. You've earned it." Marcus opened the envelope. $500, more money than he'd had in savings in months. "Mr. Patterson, I can't." "You can and you will." The old man clapped him on the shoulder. "Buy that little girl something nice. Take her somewhere special. You've been surviving for too long, Marcus. It's time to start living." At the diner, the evening shift went smoother than usual. Maybe it was his mood, maybe it was just luck, but the tips were better than they'd been in weeks. By the time he clocked out, Marcus had another $100 in his pocket. Thursday night, he took Lily shopping. Not at Goodwill, not at the clearance rack. At an actual store with actual new clothes that had never been worn by anyone else. Lily's eyes went wide as saucers when he told her she could pick out anything she wanted. Anything, within reason. Marcus grinned. But yeah, anything. She chose a dress. A blue one with little white flowers on it, the kind of thing she'd only ever seen other girls wear to church. She held it up to her chest and looked in the mirror with an expression of pure wonder. "It's so pretty, Daddy." "Not as pretty as you." They bought the dress and a new pair of shoes to go with it, and a hair ribbon that matched the flowers. It was more money than Marcus usually spent on clothes in a month, but he didn't care. For once, he didn't count every penny. For once, he let himself enjoy giving his daughter something special. Friday afternoon, Sophie texted him the address for dinner. Marcus looked it up on his phone and nearly dropped it. The house was in the hills, in a neighborhood he'd only ever driven through on the way to somewhere else. The kind of place where the driveways had gates and the lawns were always perfect. "That's where we're going?" Lily asked, peering over his shoulder. "Apparently." "Is it a castle?" Marcus laughed. "Close enough." Saturday morning, he woke up nervous. He hadn't been nervous like this since the custody hearing. His hands shook as he made breakfast. His stomach churned when he tried to eat. What was he supposed to say to these people? How was he supposed to act? He was a mechanic and a waiter. They were clearly wealthy beyond anything he could imagine. What if they looked down on him? What if they treated him like charity case? What if Lily felt out of place and uncomfortable? "Daddy, you're burning the eggs." Marcus blinked and looked down at the pan. Smoke was rising from the scrambled eggs, which had turned from yellow to brown to nearly black while he was lost in thought. "Shoot!" He pulled the pan off the burner and scraped the ruined eggs into the trash. "Sorry, sweetheart. I'll make more. Are you nervous about dinner?" Marcus turned to look at his daughter. She was watching him with those big brown eyes, too perceptive for her own good. "A little," he admitted. "Why?" "Good question. Why was he nervous?" These people had invited him. They wanted him there. Judge Caldwell had called him a good man. Sophie and Maya had been nothing but kind. "I guess I'm just not used to this," Marcus said slowly. "Being invited to nice places, being thanked for things, having people actually want to spend time with us." Lily considered this. "Mrs. Patterson wants to spend time with us." "That's different. Mrs. Patterson is like family. So maybe these people will be like family too." Marcus stared at his daughter. Sometimes she said things that stopped him in his tracks that made him wonder if she was really only 6 years old. "When did you get so wise?" he asked. "You keep asking me that." "Because you keep surprising me." He made fresh eggs and they ate breakfast together at the tiny kitchen table. After he helped Lily take a bath and carefully combed her hair while it was still wet. She put on her new blue dress and her new shoes and the hair ribbon, and when she stood in front of the mirror, she looked like a different child. "I look pretty," she said, surprised. "You always look pretty." Marcus knelt down to her level. "This dress just helps everyone else see it." He'd bought himself a new shirt too. Nothing fancy, just a clean button-down that didn't have any grease stains on it. He paired it with his best jeans and his least worn boots, and when he looked in the mirror, he thought he looked almost respectable. Almost. They left the apartment at 6:30, giving themselves plenty of time for the drive. The route took them through parts of the city Marcus rarely visited, past the fancy restaurants and the boutique shops, past the high-end car dealerships, and the office buildings, where important people made important decisions. The higher they climbed into the hills, the bigger the houses got. By the time they reached the address Sophie had sent, Marcus was gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles had gone white. The Caldwell house wasn't a castle, but it was close. A wrought iron gate opened onto a long driveway that curved through a manicured lawn. The house itself was enormous, 3 stories of stone and glass, with more windows than Marcus could count. There were at least a dozen cars parked along the circular drive, all of them worth more than Marcus made in a year. "Whoa," Lily breathed. "Yeah." Marcus swallowed hard. "Whoa." He parked his battered Honda among the luxury vehicles, feeling like a trespasser. For a moment, he just sat there trying to gather his courage. What was he doing here? These people lived in a different world. They probably had staff butlers, people who cooked their meals and cleaned their rooms. What could they possibly have in common with a broke mechanic from the wrong side of town? "Daddy!" Lily's voice was small. "Are we going in?" Marcus looked at his daughter. She was nervous too, he could see it in her eyes. But she was also excited, curious, ready to step into this unfamiliar world and see what it held. If she could be brave, so could he. "Yeah, baby." He opened his door. "We're going in." They walked up to the front entrance together, hand in hand. Before Marcus could knock, the door flew open. Sophie stood there grinning from ear to ear. "You came..." She threw her arms around Marcus in a hug that caught him completely off guard. "We weren't sure if you would, but you came." "Of course we came." Marcus patted her back awkwardly. "You invited us." Maya appeared behind her sister, equally excited. "Is this Lily?" "Oh my God, she's even cuter than you described." She dropped to her knees in front of Lily, bringing herself to the little girl's level. "Hi Lily, I'm Maya. Your dad helped us when our car broke down. He's kind of a hero, you know." Lily looked up at Marcus, then back at Maya. "He's my daddy." "The best kind of hero." Maya smiled warmly. "Do you want to see our game room? We have every video game in existence. Well, almost every video game." Lily's eyes went wide. "Really? Cross my heart. Sophie, show Marcus inside. I'm going to give this little princess a tour." She held out her hand, and Lily, after a quick glance at Marcus for permission, took it. They disappeared into the house, Maya chattering excitedly about all the games they were going to play. "She's great with kids," Sophie said, watching them go. "She always wanted to be a teacher, but Dad pushed her toward business school. And you, law school." Sophie rolled her eyes. "Because apparently our family needs another lawyer. Come on, let me show you around." The inside of the house was even more impressive than the outside. High ceilings, artwork on the walls, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Marcus felt like he should be watching where he walked, afraid to touch anything. "Relax," Sophie said, clearly reading his discomfort. "It's just a house. A stupidly big house, but still just a house. It's bigger than my entire apartment building. I know. Believe me, Maya and I would trade it for something smaller in a heartbeat. Somewhere that actually felt like a home." She led him toward the back of the house. "Dad's on the patio. He's been looking forward to seeing you all week." They walked through a set of glass doors onto a terrace that overlooked the city below. Judge Caldwell was standing at the railing, gazing out at the view. He'd traded his black robes for a casual sweater and jeans, and he looked younger somehow. More human. "Marcus." He turned and extended his hand. "I'm glad you came." Marcus shook it firmly. "Thank you for inviting us, Your Honor. Please call me Harrison, or Ben if you prefer. I'm not a judge right now. I'm just a father trying to make up for lost time." Sophie touched Marcus's arm. "I'm going to check on Maya and Lily. You two talk." She slipped back inside, leaving Marcus alone with the man who had changed his life. For a moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood there looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle on as dusk settled over the hills. "Beautiful view," Marcus finally said. "It is." Harrison nodded. "I used to love sitting out here watching the sunset, but somewhere along the way I stopped noticing. Too busy with work. Too focused on the next case, the next ruling, the next thing. I forgot to actually look. I know what you mean. Harrison turned to face him. Do you? I work 2 jobs, 14-hour days, sometimes longer. There are whole weeks where I barely see Lily awake. I tell myself it's for her, that I'm doing it to give her a better life. But sometimes I wonder if I'm missing the life I'm supposed to be giving her. That's exactly it. Harrison's voice was heavy with regret. I told myself the same thing for 20 years, working for the family, providing for the family. But what I was really doing was hiding from the family, from the hard parts, from the messy, emotional, complicated reality of being a father. He looked back at the view. Sophie and Maya grew up in this house. They had everything money could buy, the best schools, the best clothes, vacations to places most people only dream about. But they didn't have me. Not really. I was always in my office, always on the phone, always somewhere else, even when I was physically present. They still love you, Marcus said. I could tell from the way they talked about you that night. I know. That's almost worse in a way. I didn't deserve their love, but they gave it anyway. Harrison turned to face Marcus directly. That's why I wanted to meet you, to thank you properly, not just for helping them that night, but for showing me something I needed to see. What's that? That being present matters more than being successful. That showing up, really showing up, not just going through the motions, is the most important thing a father can do. Marcus thought about all the nights he'd come home after midnight, too exhausted to do anything but kiss Lily's forehead and collapse on the couch. All the school events he'd attended with his eyes half closed. All the bedtime stories he'd rushed through because he still had to get to his second job. I'm not sure I'm the best example, he admitted. I'm barely holding it together most days. But you're holding it together for her. Harrison put a hand on his shoulder. That's the difference. Everything you do, every sacrifice you make, it's for Lily. Not for your career, not for your ego, for her. She's all I have. Then you have everything that matters. They stood in silence for a moment, 2 fathers from very different worlds, connected by something deeper than circumstance. My daughters want to make this a regular thing, Harrison said. Dinners, outings, they've taken quite a shine to you and Lily. I noticed. Maya practically kidnapped her the second we walked in. Harrison laughed. She's always wanted siblings, someone to dote on, to take care of. I think Lily might fill that void quite nicely. Lily would love that. She doesn't have any family besides me. No grandparents, no aunts or uncles. It's just been the 2 of us for so long. Then perhaps it's time for that to change. Harrison extended his hand again. What do you say, Marcus? Would you be willing to let us into your life, to let us become something like family? Marcus looked at the hand, then at the man offering it. A week ago, this would have seemed impossible. A judge, a wealthy stranger, inviting a broke mechanic to be part of his world. But after everything that had happened, the storm, the courtroom, the verdict, impossible, didn't seem so impossible anymore. I'd like that, Marcus said, shaking Harrison's hand. I'd like that very much. The glass door slid open, and Lily came running out onto the terrace. Daddy! Daddy! They have a swimming pool inside the house. Maya and Sophie followed close behind, both laughing. We told her she could come back and swim sometime, Sophie explained. Hope that's okay. Can I? Daddy, please? Marcus looked at his daughter, her face glowing with excitement, her new dress swirling around her knees as she bounced on her toes. Then he looked at Sophie and Maya, at Harrison, at this family that wanted to welcome them in. Yeah, baby, he said, feeling something warm spread through his chest. You can definitely come back and swim. Dinner was served in a dining room that could have held Marcus's entire apartment. But despite the grandeur, the atmosphere was casual, warm, even chaotic. Maya and Sophie bickered over who got the last role. Harrison told embarrassing stories about his daughter's childhoods. Lily, after some initial shyness, opened up and started chattering about her school, her friends, her favorite cartoon. By the time dessert arrived, chocolate cake that Lily declared the best she'd ever tasted, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt like he belonged. "Sophie made the cake," Maya announced. "She's been stress baking all week, worried you wouldn't come." "I was not worried." Sophie's cheeks flushed pink. "I was just prepared for multiple outcomes." "She made 3 different cakes, just in case." Maya. The sisters dissolved into laughter, and Marcus found himself laughing too. It felt strange, almost foreign, this easy joy, this comfortable camaraderie. He'd forgotten what it was like to be part of something bigger than just himself and Lily. After dinner, Maya taught Lily how to play a racing video game in the game room, while Sophie and Marcus sat on a balcony overlooking the pool. "She's amazing," Sophie said, watching Lily through the glass doors. "So bright, so happy. You've done an incredible job with her." "She makes it easy." "I doubt that's true." Sophie turned to face him. "Being a single parent can't be easy, especially with everything you've been through." Marcus shrugged. "You do what you have to do." "See, that's the thing." Sophie leaned forward. "Most people don't. Most people take the easy way out. They give up. They walk away. They prioritize themselves over their kids. Like your father did." The words came out before Marcus could stop them. He winced immediately. "I'm sorry. That was... No, it's okay." Sophie's voice was quiet, but not angry. "You're right. He did walk away in his own way. He was there physically, but not emotionally, not when it mattered. He's trying to change. I know, and I appreciate it. But there's a difference between trying to make up for lost time and never losing it in the first place." She looked at Marcus with something like admiration. "You never lost that time with Lily. Even when you were working yourself to death, even when you could barely keep your eyes open, you were there. You showed up. That matters." Marcus didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to being praised, wasn't used to people seeing value in the life he'd been struggling through. "Thank you," he finally managed. "For saying that, for seeing that. Thank you for stopping that night." Sophie's eyes glistened. "You saved us, Marcus. Not just from the storm. You saved our family. Because of you, my father is finally trying to be a real dad. Because of you, Maya and I might finally get the relationship with him we always wanted. I just gave you a ride to a hotel." "You did so much more than that." She reached over and squeezed his hand. "You showed us what a real father looks like. Someone who puts his child first no matter what. Someone who shows up even when it's hard. You gave us hope." Marcus looked through the glass doors at his daughter, who was laughing at something Maya had said, her face bright with joy. "She's the one who gave me hope," he said softly. "Every single day." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. When it was finally time to leave, Lily was half asleep on Maya's shoulder, worn out from the excitement of the evening. Maya carried her to the car, like she was something precious, settling her gently in the back seat. "Same time next week?" Sophie asked. Marcus looked at his daughter at the twins at Harrison standing in the doorway of his enormous house. "Same time next week," he agreed. He drove home through quiet streets, Lily dozing in the back, the lights of the city twinkling around them. The apartment would still be small when they got there. The couch would still be uncomfortable. The fridge would still be mostly empty. But none of that mattered anymore, because they weren't alone anymore. They had people who cared about them. People who saw their worth, who wanted to be part of their lives, who had opened their doors and their hearts to a broke mechanic and his 6-year-old daughter. Family. Not by blood, but by choice. And sometimes Marcus was learning that was the strongest kind of all. The weeks that followed felt like a dream Marcus was afraid to wake from. Every Saturday, he and Lily drove up to the Caldwell house for dinner. Every Saturday, the twins greeted them like family. Every Saturday, Harrison pulled Marcus aside for conversations that felt less like small talk and more like the kind of deep, meaningful discussions Marcus hadn't had since his own father passed away years ago. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. It started with small gestures. Sophie showing up at Marcus's apartment one Tuesday evening with groceries she claimed she'd accidentally bought too much of. Maya taking Lily shopping for school supplies and refusing to let Marcus pay her back. Harrison mentioning casually over dinner that he knew someone at a better auto shop who was looking for an experienced mechanic. "The pay is almost double what you're making now," Harrison said, passing the mashed potatoes. "Benefits included. Regular hours. You'd actually get to see your daughter awake during the week." Marcus set down his fork. "Harrison, I appreciate it, but I can't just—" "You can't just what? Take a job that would improve your life. Give Lily a father who isn't exhausted all the time." Harrison's voice was gentle but firm. "Marcus, you've spent 3 years proving you're willing to sacrifice everything for your daughter. But sacrifice isn't supposed to be permanent. It's supposed to be a bridge to something better." "He's right, you know." Sophie reached over and touched Marcus's arm. "You deserve good things too. Not just Lily. You." Marcus looked around the table at the faces watching him. Lily, who had stopped eating to listen with wide eyes. Maya, nodding encouragingly. Sophie, her hand still warm on his arm. Harrison waiting patiently for an answer. These people, these strangers who had become family in the span of a few weeks. They saw something in him that he'd stopped seeing in himself a long time ago. Worth. "Okay," he heard himself say. "I'll talk to them." The interview was the following Thursday. Marcus wore his courtroom suit, still the nicest thing he owned, and sat across from a man named Gerald Torres, who owned a high-end auto shop that specialized in luxury vehicles. The kind of cars Marcus had only ever worked on when wealthy clients brought them to Patterson's for basic maintenance. "Harrison speaks very highly of you," Gerald said, reviewing Marcus's work history. "Says you're the best mechanic he's ever met. He's never seen me work on a car." "No, but his daughter has." Gerald smiled. "Sophie told him about that night on the highway. How you diagnosed her Mercedes in the middle of a thunderstorm without any tools. That takes skill." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. It was just a bad battery connection. Anyone could have spotted it. "Anyone could have kept driving, you mean?" Gerald closed the folder. "Look, Marcus, I don't care about your resume. I care about character. And everything I've heard tells me you're the kind of man I want working in my shop." He slid a piece of paper across the desk. "That's the offer. Salary, benefits, the whole package. Take a few days to think about it." Marcus looked at the number on the paper and felt his heart stop. It was more money than he'd ever made in his life. More than both his current jobs combined. With benefits, health insurance, dental, paid vacation. Things he'd only ever dreamed about. "I don't need a few days," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll take it." He started the new job the following Monday. The work was challenging. Luxury vehicles required precision and expertise that pushed Marcus's skills to their limits. But he was good at it. Better than good. Within a month, he was handling the shop's most complex repairs. Within 2 months, Gerald was talking about making him a senior mechanic. And for the first time in 3 years, Marcus was home for dinner every night. "Daddy, you're here," Lily would shout when she heard his key in the lock, running to throw herself into his arms. Every single day, the same greeting, the same joy. Like she still couldn't quite believe it was real. Marcus couldn't quite believe it either. They ate dinner together at the tiny kitchen table. They did homework together on the couch. They read bedtime stories that Marcus didn't have to rush through anymore, stories that stretched and wandered and sometimes turned into hour-long adventures that left them both laughing. On weekends, they still went to the Caldwell house. But now there were other outings too. Maya took Lily to the zoo one Saturday while Marcus was at work. Sophie helped her study for a spelling test. Harrison taught her to play chess, claiming she was already better than both his daughters combined. "That's not saying much," Sophie retorted. "Maya still doesn't know how the night moves." "I know how it moves. I just choose to ignore the rules." "That's called cheating, Maya. That's called creative strategy. Lily giggled at their bickering, and Marcus felt something warm bloom in his chest. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Loud and messy, and full of love. 3 months after the custody hearing, Marcus got a call he wasn't expecting. He was at the shop elbow deep in the engine of a vintage Porsche when his phone buzzed. He almost ignored it. He was focused in the zone, close to solving a problem that had stumped him for hours. But something made him pull out the phone and check the screen. Victoria. His stomach dropped. For a long moment, he just stared at the name. They hadn't spoken since the courtroom. He'd heard through Mr. Warren that she'd started a rehabilitation program, that her supervised visits with Lily had been postponed until she completed treatment. But that was all second-hand information. He'd had no direct contact with her in months. He could ignore it. Let it go to voicemail. Deal with it later or never. But that wasn't who Marcus was. He'd never been the kind of man who ran from hard things. He wiped his hands on a rag and answered. "Hello. Marcus." Victoria's voice was different than he remembered, smaller, tired. "Thank you for picking up. What do you want, Victoria?" "I wanted to..." She stopped, started again. "I wanted to apologize." The words hung in the air, unexpected and strange. "For what?" "For everything." Her voice cracked. "For leaving. For the custody battle. For all the lies I told, all the pain I caused. For putting Lily through that. For putting you through that." Marcus leaned against the Porsche, his legs suddenly unsteady. "Why now?" "Because I'm 60 days sober, and my therapist says I need to make amends to the people I've hurt." She laughed bitterly. "But that's not the real reason. The real reason is that I've been thinking about Lily. About what I did to her. What I almost did to her. You tried to take her away from me." "I know. You tried to take her away from the only parent who was actually there for her." "I know." Victoria's voice was a whisper now. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I was selfish and angry, and I convinced myself that I deserved her back, that money could make up for all the time I'd lost. But it couldn't. Nothing could." Marcus closed his eyes. He'd imagined this conversation 100 times. In his imagination, he'd been angry, righteous. He'd told Victoria exactly what he thought of her, made her feel every ounce of the pain she'd caused. But now that it was actually happening, he didn't feel any of that. He just felt tired and sad, and underneath it all, something that might have been pity. "What do you want from me, Victoria?" "I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'm going to do better. Not for you, not even for Lily, but for myself, because I can't keep living the way I've been living." "That's good." Marcus didn't know what else to say. "That's good, Victoria." "I'm not asking for anything," she continued quickly. "I know I don't deserve another chance. I know the supervised visits are on hold until I finish treatment. I'm okay with that. I'm going to do the work. I'm going to get better. And maybe someday, if Lily wants to know me, I'll be someone worth knowing." Marcus thought about his daughter, about the nightmares she'd had in the weeks after Victoria's call that day, the one where she'd told Lily she might have to leave, about the fear in her eyes when she'd asked if they were going to be okay. Victoria had caused that fear. Victoria had put that weight on a 6-year-old's shoulders. But Victoria was also Lily's mother, and someday Lily might want to understand where she came from. Might want to know the woman who had given her life, even if that woman had walked away from it. "Get better," Marcus finally said. "Do the work, and maybe someday we can talk about what comes next." "Thank you." Victoria's voice was thick with tears. "Thank you, Marcus." "Don't thank me. Just get better. For real this time." He hung up and stood there for a long moment, staring at the phone in his hand. Then he slipped it back in his pocket and returned to the Porsche. Some things couldn't be fixed overnight. Some damage took years to repair. But that didn't mean it wasn't worth trying. That Saturday, Marcus told Harrison about the call. They were on the terrace again watching the sun set over the city, while Lily and the twins played some elaborate game involving a blanket fort in the living room. "How do you feel about it?" Harrison asked. "I don't know." Marcus shook his head. "Part of me is still angry. Part of me wants to tell her to stay the hell away from us forever. But another part wants Lily to have a mother." "Yeah," Marcus sighed. "Is that stupid?" "It's human." Harrison swirled the coffee in his mug. "I've spent 18 years on the family court bench, Marcus. I've seen every kind of custody battle you can imagine. Messy ones, bitter ones, ones that dragged on for years and destroyed everyone involved. And the ones that turned out best. They weren't the ones where one parent won and the other lost. They were the ones where both parents figured out how to put their child first. Even when they hated each other. Even when it was hard." Marcus looked at him. "You think I should give Victoria another chance?" "I think you should wait and see. Let her prove she's changed. Let Lily decide when she's old enough what kind of relationship she wants with her mother." Harrison met his eyes. "But don't close the door completely. For Lily's sake, if nothing else." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's pretty good advice. I've had a lot of practice." Harrison smiled. "Giving advice to other people is easy. Following it yourself is the hard part. Speaking from experience, more than I'd like to admit." Harrison's smile faded. "I spent 20 years putting my career ahead of my daughter's. 20 years of missed recitals and forgotten birthdays and broken promises. And now I'm trying to make up for it, trying to be the father I should have been all along. But I can't get that time back. I can only do better going forward." "Sophie and Maya seem to have forgiven you." "They're working on it. We all are." Harrison looked toward the house where laughter was spilling out from the blanket fort. "That's what family is, Marcus. Not perfection. Just people trying to do better. Trying to love each other, even when it's hard. Trying to show up day after day, even when you've failed before." Marcus thought about those words for a long time after. 6 months after the custody hearing, Marcus stood in the living room of a new apartment. It wasn't in the hills like Harrison's house. It wasn't fancy or huge or anything that would make people stop and stare. But it had 2 bedrooms, a real bedroom for Lily and a real bedroom for Marcus, no more sleeping on the couch. It had a little yard in the back where Lily could play. It had a kitchen with actual counter space and a bathroom with a tub instead of just a shower. It was in every way that mattered a home. "Daddy, look!" Lily came running in from her new bedroom, holding up a stuffed elephant. "Mr. Trunk has his own shelf now." "He does. Let me see." He followed her into the bedroom. Her bedroom painted the soft purple she'd picked out herself and looked at the shelf above her bed. Mr. Trunk sat there proudly, flanked by a few books and a framed photo of Marcus and Lily at the zoo, taken the day Maya had treated them. "Perfect spot," Marcus said. "Maya helped me decorate." Lily bounced on her new bed, an actual bed with a frame and headboard, not the second-hand mattress she'd been sleeping on for years. She said, "I have good taste." "You do have good taste." The doorbell rang. "That's them." Lily shot past Marcus like a bullet racing for the front door. "Sophie, Maya, come see my room." The twins entered, carrying housewarming gifts, a plant from Sophie, a ridiculously oversized teddy bear from Maya. Harrison followed with a bottle of wine and a card that Marcus would discover later contained a generous gift certificate to a furniture store. "The place looks great," Sophie said, looking around. "You've done amazing things with it." "It's not much." "It's yours," she smiled. "That's what makes it much." They had dinner that night in Marcus's new dining room, a real dining room, with a table that had enough chairs for everyone. Marcus cooked nothing fancy, just spaghetti and meatballs, but it was his food in his kitchen in his home. Lily insisted on saying grace. "Thank you for the food," she said, her eyes squeezed shut, her small hands clasped together. "Thank you for Daddy. Thank you for Sophie and Maya and Harrison. Thank you for our new house." She paused. "And thank you for the night Daddy helped Sophie and Maya when their car broke down. Because if he didn't do that, we wouldn't all be here together." She opened her eyes and smiled. "Amen." Marcus had to look away to hide the tears. After dinner, while the twins helped Lily hang pictures in her room, Harrison and Marcus sat on the small back porch watching the stars come out. "You've done well, Marcus." Harrison's voice was quiet, thoughtful. "A year ago you were fighting just to survive. Now look at you. I had help. Everyone needs help. The trick is being willing to accept it." Harrison turned to look at him. "And being willing to give it. That's what you did for my daughters that night. You didn't know them. You didn't owe them anything. But you stopped anyway. Anyone would have done the same." "No." Harrison shook his head firmly. "They wouldn't. Sophie and Maya were stranded for over an hour before you came along. Dozens of cars passed them by. Dozens of people who could have stopped, who could have helped but didn't. You were different." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. "I've been thinking a lot about that night," Harrison continued. "About what it means. About why things happened the way they did." "What do you mean?" "I mean that I don't believe in coincidences. Not anymore." Harrison leaned back in his chair. "You helped my daughters, and 3 days later I was the judge in your custody case. What are the odds of that? 1,000,000 to 1. A billion. I've wondered that myself. And I keep coming back to the same conclusion." Harrison's eyes met Marcus's. "Some things happen for a reason. Not fate, not destiny, nothing so grand as that. But purpose. You helped Sophie and Maya because that's who you are. A man who helps, a man who does the right thing even when it costs him. And because you're that kind of man, everything else followed." Marcus thought about the storm. About the choice he'd made to stop when he could have kept driving. About how that single decision had rippled outward, touching lives he never could have imagined. "I almost didn't stop," he admitted. "I was exhausted. I had so many problems of my own. And there was this voice in my head telling me to keep driving, to mind my own business, to let someone else deal with it." "But you didn't listen." "No." "Why not?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "Because of Lily," he finally said. "I thought about her, about what it would mean if she was ever stranded somewhere scared and alone. I thought about what kind of man I wanted to be, what kind of father I wanted to be, and I knew that if I drove past those girls, I'd be teaching Lily that it's okay to look away when someone needs help." Harrison nodded slowly. "You taught her the opposite lesson instead." "I hope so." "You did." Harrison's voice was certain. "Believe me, Marcus. You did." They sat in silence as the stars grew brighter overhead. Inside, Lily's laughter echoed through the house, mixing with Sophie's and Maya's. The sound of family. The sound of home. 1 year later, Marcus stood in the same courthouse where he'd fought for custody of his daughter. But this time, he wasn't there to fight. He was there to watch. Sophie had passed the bar exam. She was being sworn in as a lawyer, and she'd asked Marcus to be there. "You're the reason I went into family law," she'd told him. "Watching what you went through, seeing how broken the system can be, I knew I wanted to help people like you. People who deserve a fair chance." The courtroom was packed. Maya sat in the front row, bouncing with excitement. Harrison was next to her, dressed in his judge's robes. He'd taken a break between cases to attend. Lily sat on Marcus's lap, wearing her nicest dress and asking questions in a loud whisper. "Is Sophie going to be a judge like Harrison?" "Maybe someday. Right now, she's becoming a lawyer." "What do lawyers do?" "They help people. They fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Lily considered this. Like you fight for me. Marcus's heart swelled. Yeah, baby, exactly like that. Sophie took her oath with her hand on a Bible and tears in her eyes. When it was done, when she'd officially become an attorney, she walked straight to Marcus and hugged him. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. I didn't do anything. You did more than you know. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. You showed me what courage looks like, what sacrifice looks like, what it means to never give up on the people you love. Marcus didn't have words. He just hugged her again. Later at the celebration dinner held at a fancy restaurant that Marcus still felt slightly out of place in, Harrison stood and raised his glass. To Sophie, he said, my brilliant, determined, compassionate daughter. You're going to change lives. I'm sure of it. Everyone drank. Sophie blushed. And to Marcus. Harrison continued, turning to face him. The man who changed our lives first, who reminded us what family means, who taught us that kindness isn't weakness, it's the strongest thing there is. Marcus felt every eye in the room on him, felt Lily squeeze his hand under the table. To Marcus, everyone echoed. He raised his glass, not trusting himself to speak. After dinner, as they walked to the parking lot, Lily tugged on Marcus's sleeve. Daddy. Yes, sweetheart. Are we happy now? Marcus stopped walking. He looked down at his daughter, 7 years old now, tall and bright and confident in a way she hadn't been a year ago. He looked back at the restaurant where Harrison and the twins were still laughing and talking. He thought about the home waiting for them, the job that fulfilled him, the family that had grown around them like vines around a trellis. Yeah, baby, he said, his voice thick. We're happy now. Good. Lily smiled up at him. I like being happy. Me too. They walked to the car hand in hand, father and daughter, their shadows stretching long in the evening light. Marcus thought about the storm that had started it all, about the choice he'd made to stop when he could have kept driving, about how one act of kindness had rippled outward, changing everything. He'd been so scared that night, so tired, so close to giving up. But he'd stopped anyway. And because he stopped, 2 strangers became family. A broken system delivered justice. A little girl got to stay with the father who loved her. And a man who'd been surviving for years finally learned how to live. Sometimes the smallest decisions carry the biggest weight. Sometimes helping a stranger helps you more than you could ever imagine. Sometimes the people you save become the people who save you. Marcus had learned these lessons the hard way through storms and courtrooms and sleepless nights, but he'd learned them, and he would never forget. He opened the car door for Lily, watched her climb inside, buckled her seatbelt with the same care he'd shown her every day of her life. Ready to go home? He asked. Ready. He started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, his daughter safe beside him, his heart full of a peace he'd almost stopped believing was possible. The road stretched out ahead of them, dark and endless, full of uncertainty. But Marcus wasn't afraid anymore. He'd learned that the darkness wasn't something to fear. It was just the space between one act of kindness and the next. And as long as he kept choosing kindness, kept stopping when he could keep driving, kept helping when he could look away, kept loving. When it would be easier to let go, the light would always find its way back. That was the truth. Marcus Reed had discovered in a storm. That was the truth he would carry with him for the rest of his life. That was the truth he would teach his daughter, and that she would teach her children, and that would echo forward through generations. Kindness matters. Showing up matters. Fighting for the people you love matters. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe rewards those who refuse to give up. Marcus pulled onto the highway, Lily already dozing in the seat beside him, the city lights fading behind them. He was going home. He was finally, truly going home. And he would never stop being grateful for the night he chose to stop in a storm and help 2 strangers who changed his life forever.